The Schneider Report on Fox News Channel. News at 7 p.m. every weeknight with Mike Schneider. News with perspective, fair, balanced. The only 7 p.m. newscast. Detailed, focused. News the way you want it, when you want it. The Schneider Report every weeknight. Fox News Channel. We report, you decide. Our news sources. Your source for news. Fox News Channel. We report, you decide.
In the back of the book segment today, nagging your kids. Most parents do it, but it's the child's fault because he or she just doesn't listen, right? Well, there's a new way to nag your kids, and it might really drive them crazy. Ah, sweet revenge. Joining us now from Oakland, California, is Rowena Starling, who has come up with this ingenious way of nagging. Now, Rowena, you have a 12-year-old son, Grady, right? And how did you get this idea?
I got this idea when my son was about 8 years old, and I noticed that I'd been asking him to do certain things over and over again since he was 3, and by year 8 that's 5 years that I'd been saying these same things over and over again, and I thought there had to be a better way than this. My goodness, I had another 10-15 years to go.
All right, so Grady wasn't responding to your, I'm sure, reasonable requests. So what did you do?
Well, it took about 4 or 5 years later, I decided that I was going to record it and play it back to him when I didn't feel like saying it again myself.
So you made a CD.
Yes, I did.
And you'd follow Grady around with it? Is that what you do?
No. No, there are times when I just don't want to say it again. I usually say it myself, but if I'm tired or sick or I just, feel like I'm on the brink of destruction,
you'll hit the CD.
On.
All right,
yeah.
Let's give the folks an example of what this is all about.
Make your bed and straighten up your room. Wash the dishes, please, and clean up the kitchen. Is your homework done?
That's also good when you're not in the house. See, you can, Grady, look, I'm going out, but, Now, the problem with this, and I should say this CD is on the market. It sells for $15, so Rowena has not only come up with a good idea, but she's capitalizing on it, which is what America's all about. The problem is, how do you get Grady to listen to the CD? Do you have to say, hey, look, I got a little hard metal music here, heavy metal, and then you slip it in, or what?
No. No, there is an introduction on there that explains to the parents how to use the CD, and the part of the whole process is the CD is an extension of yourself. So the child has the understanding as you listen to the introduction with the child that if they are not going to listen to the CD, it's the same as not listening to you, and the consequences follow that would normally follow when they don't listen to you.
They could be dire. Right.
It could be dire, depending on the parent.
Now, has Grady upgraded his listening now that this has happened to you?
Oh, yes, he has. Well, Grady was there when I unpacked my stock, and of course I had to go through a number of boxes and play a number of CDs all the way through just to make sure that they were okay. So he's had a dose that most kids probably would not have.
Do you really believe that this is a cute little idea that you have, and that's why we're having you on the broadcast, but do you really think that this is going to have an effect on America's youth? Will they listen more if they're nagged by a CD rather than a real person?
Well, they may or may not listen more. The point of me making the CD was to give some relief to the parent. It's a fact that children have to hear these certain training lines, I call them training lines, over and over again. That's why they're children from the time they're born until they're, 18, 20 years old. But instead of having to say it over and over again as the parent, it wouldn't be a bad idea, I thought, to have some help. Some people have nannies to help them. Most people don't have nannies. And sometimes the nanny even needs a break. And here is something that will give you a break in having to say these same things year
over
in,
and
year
over,
out.
sure.
Yes.
Now, did you ever analyze why children today, I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't listen, I have to admit it. I mean, my father didn't have a tape. He had a big hand. That was what my father had. No CD for him, you know what I mean? Well, why do kids don't listen today as opposed to when you and I were child?
Well, corporal punishment has its, that influence is very strong. Pain is a great corrector, sort of. But these days, parents are not inclined to do that. There are a lot of professionals that say this is not the thing to do. So this CD came about as a way of alleviating the stress of not having, I mean, you don't want to stand there yourself and say it 20 times, but if you could put a CD in and hit the repeat button, at least you know it's getting in there.
Rowena, thanks very much for talking with us today. We appreciate
Sure.
it.